there's definitely been a few people who have said they're really keen but just couldn't make it. So we are going to record the session. So good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Chang, co-founder of Cruxus Innovation. Really excited to be facilitating and bringing this session to you this evening, all about customer discovery, particularly in the context of a SynBio or biotech potential, I guess, applications and startup ideas. This particular web series is part of the SynBio 10X Accelerator program promotion and recruitment activities. And so hopefully you're all here kind of already thinking about, potentially interested in considering participating in that program. So I will shortly hand you over to Jason to talk a little bit more about what the SynBio 10X is all about. But I'd like to take a moment to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that I'm connecting in from today, which is the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. Pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I think, with this type of weather that we're experiencing these days, it is so important that we do kind of take a moment to appreciate the land that we get to kind of work and live in each day. I'd like to also extend that and pay my respects to any elderly elders, past, present, emerging, and in the community who are joining us today. And feel free as well to share on chat which traditional land that you're connecting from. The beauty of these online sessions is we get to be connecting in from different places across Australia. So I invite you to do that if you'd like to as well. Beautiful. So we are going to kind of spend most of the next hour or so really talking about kind of this customer discovery. What is it all about? Why is it important and valuable for people who are in the early stages of really trying to potentially explore and discover a really exciting initiative, project, or potential startup in the SynBio space. We are going to be really excited to be hearing Phil Morle from Main Sequence Ventures to talk about his experience, some of the things that he's learned, he's observed over the years, both working with deep tech founders who are really in this kind of space of trying to discover a massive potential for their idea. And then we're going to then kind of transition into a bit of a session where we get to kind of apply some of the tools that will be introduced and will be used through the 10X program. So you're going to get a little bit of a taster of the type of, I guess, frameworks, experiences that you get as part of participating in the 10X program as well. So that's kind of the game plan for tonight. I'm going to hand you over to Jason first to share a little bit about the SynBio 10X program.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Emily, and thanks everyone for coming along. Pretty excited for this session. Yeah, it's not every day you get kind of the direct access to the people who are in the know of all the space of this kind of thing, and direct access to people who hold the coin purse. But I guess just want to kick off by giving a brief rundown again about what SynBio 10X is and kind of what we're hoping to achieve this time around. So SynBio 10X is an open accelerator for Australian synthetic biology startups. And it's run by UNSW founders in partnership with the School of Biotechnology and Biomolecular Sciences at UNSW and the RNA Institute. So if you're not from UNSW, you probably haven't heard of what Founders actually is. It's Australia's leading university-based entrepreneurial support program, no bias. We're an organization that helps entrepreneurs translate their ideas and research into startups that deliver commercial outcomes. And what sets us apart, besides having a comprehensive support program that runs straight from curiosity and through to idea and to scale into startups through our accelerator programs, I feel like we're a genuine organization that really puts founders first, and kind of that's why it's in the name. And the reason I put that little GIF in there is really we're an organization that wants you to come in. We want to slingshot you, accelerate you, give you momentum, and send you kind of on your way, and also give you a wave as you come back past and support you on your journey as an entrepreneur. So why SynBio? Why are we looking in this space? And it has huge potential commercially. I think $18 billion global investment last year alone. And Australia is really well placed to kind of be part of this through kind of a lot of work through like CSIRO FSP and the Center of Excellence now, creating a really nice, coherent and aligned research sector. But we also realize we have a lot of the key infrastructure and expertise that can actually pull off a lot of the things that SynBio wants to do in terms of creating solutions for agriculture, next generation therapeutics. But one of the problems is, despite having all of this, there's often this kind of gap between getting an idea out of a lab and into the marketplace. And part of that is, through the different bureaucratic channels, but also it's the need that SynBio startups and biotech have for specialist infrastructure to actually do their product development and scale up and get to the market. And often a lot of accelerator programs can really do a great job of giving this business coaching and mentoring to teams, obviously not as well as UNSW founders, but the gap they can't really fill is that infrastructure. And that's why we've come along. David Burt, my director for entrepreneurship at UNSW founders, and the head of BABS, Marcel Dinger, who are both in the chat, I think, as well. They, put their heads together and realized there's a lot of empty lab space in BABS this year, and realized we can put some startups in there and we can combine that, proven founders business coaching and that global mentor network with providing access to PC2 lab space and the R&D infrastructure and expertise that is at UNSW. And we can really create this slingshot effect where we can bring a team in, give them some momentum, and actually get them to make well on their way in terms of practical and experimental product development. The big announcement that was last week, I think I can never tell time these days, it's always grey here in Sydney, but CSIRO, funnily enough, CSIRO's VC fund Main Sequence is backing the startups that come through our program through a $120,000 safe investment, which is pretty amazing for the 6 teams that actually do get into our program. And quickly before I go into kind of what the 10X program is, the reason we wanted to run this as a workshop is that customer discovery is a really critical step, and it's likely there are a lot of scientists in this audience that maybe we put a lot of emphasis on technical development of our idea, but perhaps not understanding, where it sits in the market and what kind of product it forms, or who we're actually trying to create this technology for. And a little investment here can save a lot of time, money, and possibly even your entire venture. And we want to make this a workshop to give you a tiny taste of what you would get in the 10X program. So in the program, just a quick summary, because I've done this a few times now, we're going to be offering 6 SynBio startups from anywhere in Australia, 6 months of support through PC2 lab space, the UNSW R&D facilities and expertise. So that does include the Ramachandra Center, recombinant protein facility. We're going to have founders proven business and commercialization coaching. There's ongoing support post-program. You get one-on-one meetings with your entrepreneur in residence, who is Dr. Peter French, who is also in the chat. And I suggest you look him up. He is, fair to say, a titan of Australian biotech. We have a 500+ global mentor network we can give you access to, and that includes some biotechs, but also a lot of kind of adjacent industries and kind of SaaS and B2B that can give you kind of a more objective third-party insight into, I guess, how your business might, flourish in terms of if you divorce yourself from looking at technical aspects only. As well as the Main Sequence safe of $120,000, UNSW Founders does also contribute $20,000 to you as well. And there's also potential access to $30,000 in service vouchers from Bioplatforms Australia. And that is potential because they want to make it available for consideration so you can apply to them if you get in, and they'll make that available to you. And then once you've finished all of this amazing stuff through the 10-week program of 10X Accelerator, you get the opportunity to pitch to our kind of nicely curated investor network at Demo Day and kind of show off what you've learned over the last 10 weeks and kind of pitch to people the trajectory that your company is now on. As I kind of said at the start, we're an open accelerator. We're open to everyone in Australia. As long as you have an operating Australian registered company and you're using or engineering biology to tackle some of society's big problems, we want to hear from you. We say a clear IP status, and that just means that if you're coming from another institution or organization, we just want you to have a clear agreement that you have a license to operate and utilize that intellectual property. We want teams to be coming to us at kind of the proof of concept stage. So that means we don't want you to be doing too much exploration. We want you to have a really robust kind of experimental concept of what you're doing, and then we can help you really refine that into that product. And that, you know, during the 4-week pre-accelerator, there's 1 day a week we'd love you to commit to. And that during the on-site accelerator, which will be in person here in Sydney, there is a approximately 12 hours per week commitment. Plus, you know, you're going to want to be in those labs. They are brand new. We're outfitting them with everything, including pipettes and set tabletop centrifuges. So kind of you just need to come in and start getting to work for us, really, or for yourselves, rather. The big date that you need to be cognizant of is May the 15th. That is when applications close. So you have a little under, check's watch, a month, or just over a month rather, to get your applications in, and do submit an EOI as well through our website. You can use that QR code, the top right-hand corner there, to go to the website and check it out. There is a bit of information we need, and we encourage you to get started early on that. And if you do need help on this, please do reach out. But the pre-accelerator kicks off the end of May and runs through to June. And then we're the SynBio 10X accelerator for those final 6 teams that will run from the 18th of August to the 26th of October. And then you'll have that lovely lab access for the 6 months afterwards. And I guess that's really all I wanted to say to you for now. I'll be around at the end if you have any more questions. But if you don't want to ask me questions in person because you're too nervous, just send me an email. I was going to say always happy to respond to emails, but I think we can all relate to inbox overload sometimes. But yeah, do send me an email. Or if I've convinced you, just go to that link at the bottom there, theairtable.com, and submit an EOI. And yeah, just really looking forward to hearing from you. And I will now pass it over back to Emily, and we can get the show on the road.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jason. Absolutely. So yeah, feel free to keep popping questions that you might have on chat. Jason will probably be monitoring that. What we have done is also reserve some time at the back end of the session. It is this, we've planned for this session to finish now 7 o'clock. But if you'd like to kind of stay back for 10-15 minutes, have a chat to Jason or other attendees, participants who are in the session, to have a bit of a networking and a conversation, feel free to do that as well. So there'll be plenty of times for discussion and dialogue. All right, I'll just quickly give you a bit of a sense of kind of where we're at. So gave you a bit of an opening in terms of what the 10X program, SynBio 10X is all about, why this is such an exciting opportunity for Australia right now. And then we're going to sort of now zoom into a particular topic that I find when I work with researchers, particularly technical leaders, when it comes to really trying to understand and really measure out what is that potential impact of their idea. The value of customer discovery cannot be undersold, if you will. And so we're really kind of excited and grateful for Phil to be joining us today and sharing kind of his experiences. We've kind of asked him 2 pretty big questions, giving him about maybe 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have plenty of time to kind of open up the floor for a bit of a Q&A. So the 2 kind of big questions that we've asked him to share is, one, what is it about customer discovery that is unique in the context of SynBio and SynBio opportunities? And then the second one is particularly for, I'd say, kind of technical people who are really trying to explore and go after opportunities in kind of the SynBio space, or really kind of any commercial space. What are the habits and behaviors that you've seen that are really quite important and really kind of differentiate between the founders that you get really excited and you're ready to back, and maybe the ones that you kind of have reservations on? So those are the kind of 2 big questions that we've thrown to Phil. So Phil, take it away.
Thanks a lot, and it's great to be here everyone, and it's fabulous that there is at last an accelerator program just for synthetic biology companies. I've been wanting this for a long time, and I think it's going to be a very powerful creator of companies. Main Sequence invests in companies that have science at their core. And, we've made it our business to really understand how to make the biggest, best, most successful companies in this way. And customer development is really a key to delivering that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of share some principles, and I'm also just going to share some examples from some of the portfolio companies that we have today. But I will say as an opener that the difference between a synthetic biology company that does customer development and one that does not do customer development is significant. Synthetic biology companies that do extremely well put a lot of time into customer development, and that means that a lot of people actually understand what they are and can come in behind them to help them. A lot more investors understand what it is that they're doing and understand they can answer the kind of so what question. A lot more customers are interested in working with the startup, and there's a lot more pull for that startup, which gets everyone a lot more excited. And, counterintuitively, companies that do customer development instead of staying inside the lab actually end up making different molecules, making different things with their SynBio process, because the customers tell them what to make, and they realize they were engineering down the wrong path quite often. And I'll give you some examples of that shortly. So the main message I want to leave you with is please don't stay in the lab, whether or not you come into SynBio 10X. Get out of the building and figure out what it is that you need to be building in your molecules, but also what's the rest of the company that comes around those products that you're building with biology. So I will just share some slides now and just give you some examples. We'll go there. All right. How's that, Em? Thumbs up? Good.
Looking good.
So I'm going to give you some examples of different companies that are in our portfolio today and how they've approached the balance of the science and the customer development. But one thing they've all got in common is that they all went to market with customers, doing real work with customers. On the same day, they spun out and started working with us. So there's no, we just need to give up on the idea, no matter how early your science is, of doing the science and knowing whether you want to make the company and then doing the serial work to actually grow the company. We need to do both of these things in parallel, tangle the two things up and get them informing each other through time. So Samsara is an example. Samsara have developed a series of enzymes which infinitely recycle various plastics, various polymers. So that's the synthetic biology piece, but they've done a lot more than that. So they've been working with customers to, first of all, understand the priorities of which polymers they should prioritize. They've been working with customers to understand the supply chain that the recycling process will sit inside. They've been working out where they're going to get the feedstock. They've been working out where the recycled plastic is going to go. They've been working out how customers are going to know something has been recycled so that they can get the whole 360-degree recycling economy going. And they've just been getting amazing feedback from customers. So this company is currently 1 year old. It already has major deals with the big retailers in Australia, like Woolworths. You can imagine the fizzy drinks company that have already had stated that they would like to start working with them. All the big FMCG companies want to work with them. And this company is currently raising a round. 1 year later, it's raising 50 million Australian dollars. And it's going to get large very, very quickly. Now, take your mind back to what tends to happen inside the lab and how quickly 1 year in a lab goes. It goes very, very quickly, but in that same year, Samsara has got to where it's got, and it's getting dragged out of the lab even further into the world. Samsara's second employee was a creative director who started making collateral for the customers in the customer development work. And I'm just giving you one particular page out of a recent deck, sort of showing some strategies around how Samsara is going to engage with the world, with people, with tribes, with the people that are going to cause the machine to turn. And you can see here people at concerts in SAM t-shirts actually doing the recycling work. And so they're just learning what all the different parts of the value chain are and how to motivate people and creating pull for their company. I'm going to say this a lot. This is the job of customer development. It's not just to understand what the customer wants. That's the primary objective. The second thing is to create pull, to cause the market to want what it is that you're making and start dragging it out of your hands. So Samsara has been doing both of those things, and is absolutely knowing what to make and who wants it and why. Here's a similar company called Ulu, who take seaweed, use that as a feedstock into their precision fermentation process to create bioplastic, a bio-PHA, that the fashion industry will use. Again, they're about, well, these guys are about 1.5 years old. We invested in them about 6 months ago. They are very, very focused on the fashion industry, and you can see how they're thinking here. So ultimately, they can be used for packaging and all sorts of things. But, you know, weirdly, it's not helpful to make a product which is powerful, probably like all the ones you guys are imagining, and then say this is for everybody and it'll work for all kinds of things. So Ulu could have said, our product works, you know, it's going to be great for packaging, it's going to be great for clothing, it's going to be great for computer hardware, it's going to be great for cars, right? They could say all that, but then it's for nobody as well. And there's no pull, like nobody knows to pull it or not. What they've done is said, let's start with fashion and let's start working with major fashion brands, which they've been doing. They've got a series of, after just 6 months, they've got some incredible deals with fashion companies, all deals that lead to mass scale offtake deals with a series of pilots in between. You know, they're pioneering this Made with Ulu brand that you can see here on the right-hand side with some major brands. And so they're sort of figuring out how to, you know, what do we make, and how do we actually take that through the channels to the customer and the customer's customers in this case. And it's super fascinating to see it work. The other thing that they're doing is they're saying, right, we're going to focus on fashion. Their hero product is going to be fiber. So they're learning from firms like Lululemon what that fiber needs to be. They're then collaborating with CSIRO in this case to turn their polymers into fibers to do that work. But of course, at the moment, because they're a SynBio company, as you can all imagine, they're not making tons of this stuff. So they're making these small amounts. So what they're making is the small things in fashion for the same customers, like the little loops that laces go through in sneaker companies and buttons on suits for MJ Bale and things like that. And just already starting to penetrate the market with actual customers getting actual products that are actually completely biodegradable and sequester more carbon than they produce when they're making the product. And so, again, a lot of activity, which is at least as much as the science. And that work is helping them know what to make in the lab and is causing their work to get pulled out of the lab. Here's another company, a food company, Eden Brew. They're making cow milk without cows. So they're using SynBio to precision ferment each protein. So 4 caseins and 2 whey proteins in milk. And then they're using dairy science to recombine that into casein micelles and the rest of the milk to make mainstream milk. Now, how they began was, so first of all, they actually co-founded this company with Norco, which is Australia's biggest dairy co-op. And so Norco, of course, has all the processing plants to actually turn cow milk into productized milk or custard or ice cream or whatever. And so they're already figuring out what they need the performance of the milk to be to actually be a great dairy product with Norco. But they're also just seeing how customers react. So what you can see here is, cappuccinoized Eden Brew milk, right? And where they began was with the science of recombining and then went to making the synthetic proteins. So this is Eden Brew after 2 months of being alive. But most of the proteins in here are actually bovine proteins, not synthesized proteins. But at least they proved that they could create a casein micelle that makes it heat up and froth and do all that sort of stuff before, in a way that others can't, was possible. And then from here, they've been synthesizing each of the proteins, and that's where they've got up to today. They've got the synthesized version of this, but all this is just from working with customers. Another example is Nourish Ingredients. They're making animal fats without the animals. Now, this was fascinating when they started talking to customers for a couple of reasons. So first of all, they went to big customers and they said, so again, the major FMCG brands of the world, and said, we're making animal fats without the animals. What do you think? Like, what would you use it for? Would you be interested in it? Would you be interested in doing pilots with us? And they said, yes, yes, yes. And can we invest and when's it ready? Right? This is a good sign. This is what you want the market to say about your product. Now, often people think, I'm not going to go and speak to a customer until I'm ready, until I know the science works, until all these things are lined up in a row. This was the first day that they went out and started that conversation. And the original plan was literally to make, the equivalent of tallow and buttermilk and things like that. And what they learned from the market is actually they needed to focus on the phospholipids, because it's the phospholipids that create the flavor spike, which create the thing that's missing if you try and have a plant-based meat or a plant-based dairy. What you're missing in that experience is the phospholipid experience. And that is very, very hard to make. But the good news is it's low volume, high cost ingredient that delivers those lipids to the customers. So they learned that. They learned that in like a month from founding. And that's what they've focused on. They will do the rest of the stuff, but they know exactly the right thing to build for customers. And they've had an exceptional sampling experience, which is another thing. No one will believe you when you tell them the alchemy that you're doing with synthetic biology. You're going to say, I am going to solve this waste problem with a new enzyme that I make with yeast or something, or you're going to say, I'm going to replace this thing that animals make, or I'm going to infinitely recycle plastic. And people go, that sounds amazing. But it doesn't mean anything until you show them. And the sooner you can demo something, like even what I showed you with the Eden Brew example with the bovine-based recombined milk that started to turn the wheel. What you're looking at here is a box. I don't know if I've got the actual box here, actually. Oh, I have. So here's this box. You can see it sort of vaguely through my magical background. But here's a screenshot of what's inside. And what you can see in the bottom right is like a beautiful little tub of hard fat. And then you can see 3 vials, each containing phospholipids with some carbohydrate ready for a Maillard reaction. And there was a beautiful little book that you can see blurred at the top there that sort of took you through this science experiment that you could do at home. And then they also delivered some tofu, flavorless tofu. And in the beautiful little book, this experience was take a pipette of phospholipid, drop it onto the tofu, and then fry it in the fat that's in the tub there. And it was amazingly good fun. It was just beautiful. Like even opening the box was like an Apple, unboxing. And then we fried I did it with my kids here at home. We fried we fried the tofu with the phospholipids. And it's like, oh my God, that's a pork chop. Right. And then we ate it. It's like, oh, that is like, how did that just magically turn into a pork chop? This same kit, we made sort of 30 of them and we sent them out before the recent Nourish capital raising started on a Friday. And they had term sheets on Monday morning from multiple investors, right? Now they could have so imagine this same company that have made exactly the same thing, right? With just as awesome, had a dog ugly pitch deck, didn't know how to talk about it, and started going to investors on that day and said, we reckon we can make animal fats without animals. Do you think that would have happened? It just wouldn't have happened. And so it's just so valuable. This is not incremental. This is the essence of the work as well as the science. And with that, I think I'll leave it. I hope I put the message across.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Phil. What a phenomenal way to end with that story. Gosh, how awesome is that? So feel free, invite anyone to kind of jump off mute. I mean, it's not every day that you get some time with Phil. So this is your opportunity to ask questions and really, distill down all those great knowledge and insights and experiences from somebody who is really, really kind of, doing it on a day-to-day basis. So let me just have a quick check just to see if we've got anybody that's kind of ready and roaring to go with a question. So feel free, if you do have a question, just kind of raise your hand or give us a bit of a reaction so we can kind of invite you up. Jason.
Oh, I just feel like I have to jump in. That was great. I'm really interested to elaborate more on the Samsara ethos, or one of their first hires being creative designer, because I think that's a really counterintuitive hire for a technical company, right? And I think it's something it's that kind of, you say, that kind of step, that change in mindset, I guess, of thinking about less as a technology.
Yeah, I think what do all SynBio companies have in common in their essence? And that is that most people won't understand what they are, right? And even worse, if you, especially if you're making food, the risk is you frighten people. Even the word SynBio is a bad word, don't you think? Like it means, it's like it's GMO waiting to happen again. So we need to really think about how we bring these products to the world, and I'm a big believer in the kind of built with biology revolution that's just about to happen. I mean, this is an incredible production process based on an inspiring scientific platform which has developed over the last few decades that, is the sensible way to make stuff. It's it's environmentally friendly at a time where we have to fix these problems. It's taking the super efficient ways that nature has figured out how to solve problems, like the samsara example. Jason, you may know this already, but the enzyme evolved in a Japanese landfill, and then the teams basically just accelerated the whole evolutionary process on it. And the point being, nature's invented it. It's really exciting. And so when people think about it the right way, it's the rest of the world. The other 90% of the forces which will cause something to be impactful can get involved with it. So again, we haven't founded Samsara to be like a machine that sits on the end of a recycling plant somewhere, and we get a license fee for each ton of plastic that goes through. No, this company is to stop plastic waste, halt it in its tracks. And the only way we're going to do that is by inspiring as many people as possible. And the way we're going to do that is with people that can communicate like a creative director. Did anyone just completely disagree with me and they're nervous about saying? Like, who says, no, screw you, Phil, we should stay in the lab. We don't even know we can do this yet, and there's no way I am putting myself on the line and there's no way I'm going to Fonterra and telling them what I'm doing, because it'll be embarrassing until I know I can do it. Does anyone feel that way?
Me from 5 years ago.
Phil, I'll play devil's advocate if you like.
Go on, David.
Thank you again. Awesome stories. I love the Nourish one in particular. I think the devil's advocate view is, okay, if I think something that I hear a lot is certain entrepreneurs or scientists will say, I just want to use grant funding to get a certain level of evidence before I start the company, before I raise money from investors. And I think there are some good reasons they think that, and there are some bad reasons they think that. But I think that's the best, at least the most justified, or at least the most common excuse I hear when people say, "Hey, we don't want to take this out too soon." They don't want to, take investors' money, run some customer discovery experiments, get a zero, and then what do we do? So I think that's maybe the objection. So we'd love to hear your perspective on, because I think it's this question of, from my experience, most researchers stay in the lab too long, and that kills the commercial potential. Some leave too early and they die as well.
Yeah.
And so it's this anxiety of, it feels too soon, but it'll never feel at the right moment until it's too late. How does a team navigate that choice?
Yeah. So clearly there is, I think the moment is when there's something to do with the customer. That's the time to go. That is never too soon if you can do that, right? So if you're at the point where you've read some papers and you think that you have a hypothesis about a scientific approach and you need to validate that a bit in the lab, and sure, that's probably not the right time. Like, get some grants, do the work, understand what it is that you want to, develop your own hypotheses of value doing that. Then there is an entirely different dynamic that creates success, I think. And obviously I have a bias, like everyone except my bias as a venture capitalist here on this call. But here's the difference, that grant funding, the whole system is kind of designed so that people raise as much grant funding as they can, support their team for as long as possible, right? Counterintuitively, that creates a negative feedback loop in venture sort of thinking, because you're doing as much as you can over as long a period as you can, right? In venture, you try and do as much as you can with the money you have. And actually that fear of it all falling over is exactly what makes it work, right? I do this all the time. I force myself into these situations, right? So you say, you're saying, I mean, it begins with this program, right? It's like I at Main Sequence, in partnership with you guys, we're saying, here's $140,000. What can you do with that, right? And then you're going to go, at some point during that, you're going to say to other people, look at what we did with $140,000. Can you imagine what will happen if you give us 5 million? And then you'll be going, look at what we did with 5 million. We already know how we're going to scale this thing up. We just need your 40 million now, right? And you can see where I'm going here. SynBio companies aren't cheap, right? And so the alternative so there's one model where you end up in a cadence of, I'm going to do as much as I can with as little money as with the money that I have. And so you don't do very much. So you can only raise a little bit more, or from grants or from venture. And so you can only do it like a little bit more. And then you quickly become, oh, is that the company that's been around for 10 years and, and they haven't really done very much yet? Whereas, I come back to the Samsara story. They are raising 50 million now for like 1 year since they founded the company. And that's not because they're greedy. It's because they have to build a plant to show people that they need to do, they can do what happens next. And that plant costs $40 million. And so they have to make the most valuable version of the company so that they don't sell the whole company to investors, right? So it's a weird counterintuitive dynamic, but that's the thrill of combining venture with deep science. And if you look at, your equivalent at IndieBio in San Francisco, and you speak to your, all the people on this call speak to your peers in the US that know people that have gone through IndieBio, they will tell you that people go there instead of doing it at their university, even though it's got, ramshackle equipment, unlike this program, which has got amazing gear, right? They use this terrible equipment, everything, just so that they go onto the burning platform and get more done in less time. And so that's I hope that answered your question, David.
Yeah, I mean, get more done in less time is the answer I will use now when I get those questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Marcel, you've been waiting patiently, so I'll invite you in if I've got a question or a comment.
Just a comment and a question really for Phil as well. Thanks, Phil. It was great to see those stories. I guess my interest is in, where do you think from your perceptions and from what you've seen in the industry, where do you think the opportunities are greatest in synthetic biology? The examples you showed were, so there's a lot of stuff in the food tech space, the replacement food world. There's obviously there's stuff going on, I guess, in the energy space in a growing way. And I don't know if we're quite at the point yet where we've seen a big success story there. And I guess the other area is probably the med tech kind of space in creating, developing replacement or more efficient ways of creating medicines and pharmaceuticals. What are your thoughts on the horizons for those in those three, I guess, loose categories? I'm not saying that it's exhaustive, but probably the main ones. Where do you think they sit?
Yeah, great. Good to see you again as well, Marcel. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, likewise, Phil.
So look, this is as a scientific discipline. I think we'd all agree this is fairly mature now. Like it's coming of age. It's time to do something with this amazing science. Industrially, it's all very early. In pharmaceuticals, of course, it's probably the most mature. The example I give people all the time is insulin as a precision fermented alternative to lots of pig pancreases being, for harvesting the insulin. But I guess what's interesting now is that we're all pursuing the mainstreaming of these products in mass products that everyone uses. So starting with the examples I gave in like consumer food, like milk and meats and things like that, you can't make these products at thousands of dollars a kilo. They have to be tens of dollars a kilo to work, which takes me to sort of the first answer to your question. There's the picks and shovels that actually deliver scale and cogs, to actually build the industries around this. We need to get the big versions of these products out there. And so we've got, I think those of us that are sort of tracking the Australian system, we're sophisticated up to the edge of the lab, and then everything that needs to scale up from there, all the scale up work, including the strain development or different biological platforms like algae and things like that. It's all to be done. The reason there's so much food in there, Marcel, is because that's my journey into SynBio. I began with food and then went into SynBio food. And then now I'm in materials, because materials are just so adjacent. It's like the same production process, the same feedstocks quite often, the same kind of process, the same challenges with waste, the same conversations about how you flow one company's waste into another person's feedstock, which, by the way, is another, those sorts of shovels for the gold rush type tech is really important. So what I'm thinking about a lot at the moment is instead of having these kind of perfect feedstocks like glycerols and perfect sugar-based solutions for precision fermentation, like why can't we just shovel grape waste into a fermenter and use that, or wheat or something like that? And that means someone needs to do the work to turn waste into consistent sort of high-tech feedstock. And but the materials is really interesting. I think how do we make alternatives to concrete? How do we sequester lots of stuff into buildings, because the buildings have been brewed, the materials have been brewed. I think there's a lot to do on bioremediation. So kind of what about everything that's left after you've just done sort of metal processing, or you've just dyed a pair of jeans with toxic indigo dye, or just all these things. But I would just pick off, if I was in any of your shoes, I would just look at all the things that are damaging the earth the most. Like just go and get a report of what the top companies in the world are now under an ESG attack on, and go, I know how to do that with SynBio, and then start that company, because people are going to throw money at you.
Love it. Thanks, Phil.
Beautiful.
Great advice.
It is a great question, and that, I mean, there's another session right on just on that itself. Peter, you have been kind of waiting patiently, but we're gonna do a little shout out, because Peter's actually going to be our key speaker or guest speaker for the next session. But maybe if I can just throw across to Emery, you had a question that you shared on chat, which really does talk to some of the things that Phil talked about around, particularly when we are working in SynBio, but really, a lot of the researchers that I work with that are very much kind of building next generation or frontier solutions, technology. Often it does take the existing customers. They can't even imagine that as a solution, as a possibility. And so Phil, any of your kind of experiences that you can share around what advice or what have you seen other founders do really well to kind of enable the customer or the clinician pool, as kind of Anne-Marie's context is?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, you're in a really interesting context, which is vital to do customer development for other reasons as well, right? Because you've got, I mean, I have a few healthcare companies as well, not SynBio, but in healthcare. And what I find is a fairly consistent problem is a resistance from the clinical community to take on something new. It quite surprised me. I must say that's how it was, but that's how it is. And I would say I made the mistake of going too much to the woo-woo, as you called it in your message there, for one of them. So we have, I'll tell you the name of the company. So Maxwell Plus is a Brisbane-based artificial intelligence company for screening and treatment of prostate cancer.
Mhm.
And they wanted to go, they go direct to patient, and they go direct to patient because they believe the clinical system has failed men, right? Because men don't go to the doctor and get properly checked for prostate cancer. And they had a phenomenal pull from those male patients, but they did not do customer development with doctors. And so what that meant was those doctors passively resisted any kind of engagement with it. Just they wouldn't allow the thing to prosper. We've found like private Facebook groups that GP friends told us, where all the doctors were saying, no way we're going to let this happen. These people that think they can do it and we can't do it, right? It was making an enemy accidentally because they hadn't done direct engagement with the doctors. So what they did was they parallelized customer development. They continued to do the work with the men, with the end customer, so that those men, they understood what motivated them, because ultimately they needed that evidence to talk to clinicians about, that these men got the results they wanted, that they were having their lives saved, that they were not churning, they were paying real money because they thought it was so valuable in their life. But they did a different tone of customer development, which was actually much closer to what would be a traditional medical journey, which is they picked exactly the right clinicians who would be voices that other people would listen to, and then they wrote papers with those clinicians that those clinicians then presented at conferences and told the Maxwell story there. And actually, again, it's a little bit of customer development because they're within that, because they're hearing what they're saying is important in order to tell other doctors that you should really do this. This is much better. But it's a delicate it's a delicate balance. But I think probably the summary of it is who matters in your value chain, and someone matters if they can and then try experiments to them into champion. Is my internet just gone bad? Yeah, sorry, the message. But that's, yeah, you got to move everybody that might block you towards being a champion by learning from them and knowing what they want, and then giving them what they want.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I guess there's another part, excuse me, I have COVID, so that's why I did it in a chat. I think there's another perspective that I would totally agree with that. And I would also say that I've tried to, because this technology could solve world hunger, pain and injury, there's the elderly, there's, dogs and cats, there's the people baby boomers who are getting old, who are not as mobile, there's athletes, there's, you name a market segment, they've got pain and injury. So that's too broad. So I think that's also helpful for my thinking of, should you take a market segment like athletes and they become the endorser, because then some of this resistance, I know we've got customers who are athletes, who are demand pull, and so therefore that's a more powerful way of biting the elephant.
Yeah. My favorite way of thinking about this is an American venture capitalist, Peter Thiel, says, always be a monopoly. So even if the entire market size for your monopoly is 5 people, but it means you create this energy and this momentum in a whole market which may be very small, and then you just go out to the next ring, and then you go out to the next ring.
Yeah.
You're always dominating the market. You're always the monopoly player in the market that you've chosen. And I think that's a really interesting way of going. The really annoying sort of nuance with investors and other people is, as soon as you start doing this, they say, oh, that's a small market, right? And you have to be ready with the the rest of the story when they're ready to hear it. Do you know what I mean? Like, here are the steps. Here's what Elon Musk calls the master plan. Like, I do this, and because I did that, I'm going to do this, and when I've done that done, I'm going to do this, and then so it's kind of this is going to be really big, and look at how we're already going here with this market that we're monopolizing.
Phil, I'm just going to kind of jump in just so that we can have Peter share his questions, and then we'll kind of wrap this segment up, and then kind of transition to sort of diving into some of the tools. Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks, Phil. I guess one of the areas that is a challenge for this is in identifying who the customer might be. You have to disclose some information.
Yeah.
To whet the appetite.
Yeah.
And to disclose the information before you patent is very dangerous, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
And yet to lodge a patent application, you need some data to indicate a proof of concept. So that balance between staying in the lab too long, but staying in the lab long enough to get enough data to lodge a patent application so you can go out and test the market.
Yeah.
Is a bit of a dance that you need to do. Do you want to just comment on that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's actually simpler than it would appear, which is that when you're doing the customers actually only care about the solution when it lands. They'll certainly ask you about, tell me how you do that then. So with Samsara, they'll say, well, how come you can do it and no one else can do it? Tell me what the process is. And that's when they say, well, we can't tell you that yet because our patents are still pending. And here's the date where we can tell you more about it. So they don't share the science. They keep the science, beyond saying we have developed our own enzymes and our own process that can break down a polymer in 10 minutes, right? That's the extent to which they share it. And then they show, they demonstrate, they'll say, look, here's some PET, look at what happens. That's our magic. And we're not going to tell you how we do it. If you want to invest in it, you can sign an NDA, and even that isn't going to happen until our patents are, at a stage at which that's safe to do it. So you can do it. It's the customer development is just focusing on understanding what their need is and how you're going to, and what you need to deliver. It's completely fine to keep it a secret about how you're going to do that. And so I will say as well, Peter, just to show I'm not completely sort of railroading the importance of patents. Nourish, for example, had a period in the wild where they learned a whole bunch of stuff, and then they went into the lab again for 6 months. And just built that strength and got all the patents in and got all that happening. And then they came out again with a slightly different story later. So it isn't, you absolutely have to have it in your mind and know how you're going to do it, but it shouldn't stop the customer development.
Thanks.
Cool.
Beautiful. And it's actually a really great little promo for our next workshop, actually, which is really all about spending a bit more time diving into how do you think about and approach, designing these, whether it's, customer discovery conversations or experiments to really help step you through towards that without feeling like, you're giving away the secret sauce or jeopardizing, the kind of scientific kind of path ahead. So beautiful way to kind of share a little bit of promo and another teaser for the next workshop. I just want to say thank you so much, Phil, for taking the time to kind of share with us your story. Really amazing, such a great way to kind of absolutely drive and emphasize the value of that burning platform of the role of customer development, customer discovery. So I want to say thank you. Feel free to stay on, but I know you are a busy man, but you really appreciate your time with us.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck. I hope you all come into the program. I'm excited.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Good stuff. All right. So we are going to spend the next probably about maybe 20 minutes or so, wanting to make sure that we are covering what we said we were going to do in the session. Although I'm definitely one key beneficiary of hearing kind of Phil's stories about why customer discovery, customer development is so important and critical. But we also kind of want to give you a bit of a taster on, okay, sort of here are some great reasons why customer discovery is important. Let's give you some examples of how a program like SynBio 10x is going to enable you to actually turn the kind of the why and what into, okay, how are we actually going to do that? So we are going to focus on really in that first phase of what we think about in terms of customer discovery. A lot of the, I guess, tools, frameworks that you'll be exposed to as part of thinking about the elements that you need to bring together in order to take your idea into market will predominantly likely come from the world of lean startup and lean innovation. And one of the key kind of frameworks that have been used quite often is this tool around customer discovery, but really understanding what is your customer or your market and what's the jobs to be done that they are trying to achieve. So we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of playing with that and inviting you to kind of use this as almost a time and opportunity, maybe just to refine the idea that you're working on and potentially, plan for potential kind of customer conversations if you're up for it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I'll just get a quick show of hands. So we are going to kind of use the term market and customer interchangeably. And the kind of the reason for this is just so that it's a little bit easier for us to kind of get going with this tool. So one of the things that we actually are going to get each of you to do, or actually what we might actually do first is if we can, just because we didn't quite get this information at the start of when you registered to the session, is if you can change your Zoom name to your first name and then underscore with an I, if you are coming in with a project or an idea or a startup that you're kind of working on, whether it could be at a concept stage, doesn't have to be you've got an ABN ready to go, just so that we get a sense of kind of who we've got in the Zoom room today. So if you do have an idea that you're working on, a project that you're working on, you can change your Zoom name just to kind of add an underscore and an I at the back, because we will actually kind of break you up into breakout rooms for this particular kind of activity. So the easiest way to kind of change your Zoom name is either to hover across your video, and there should be a button that shows up next to the mute button. And if you drop down there should be an option to rename. And there you'll be able to find that. Beautiful. Excellent. Great. All right. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be a fully fledged idea or a business. If it's something that you're kind of working on, that you're kind of cooking up, that's okay as well, just so that we know kind of how to group you into different rooms. Okay. All right, no problems. Good stuff. Okay, so the kind of main activity that we'd like you to do, this is a tool that we're going to borrow from the theory of kind of jobs to be done theory. Has anybody heard of this particular framework or tool? Oh, great, Lucy, great. Okay, fantastic. So it's actually been around for a really long time, but Anthony Ulrich kind of popularized it essentially. I think it's one of those other examples of a piece of theory that has been around for a really long time, but somebody comes along and goes, I can actually turn this into something useful and practical for people in both business, innovation, marketing. And so it's this concept that people, like all of us, kind of hire product, services, solutions to get a particular job done. And the way for you to thinking about how your idea or your solution is valuable is by first understanding what is the jobs to be done that your potential customer, the market that you're looking at is trying to get done. And that's kind of the frame of mind that we're going to invite you to kind of explore, if you will. And I think it definitely goes back to what Phil talked about a little bit in terms of, it's so important, even if you are early in your journey, about thinking about how your idea goes towards market, is to be thinking about who is your customer, and what is it that they're trying to get done, because through that it enables you to really be able to maybe surface some of the opportunities, some of the unmet needs that they're looking to I guess fill, and then connect that to how is your solution, how is your kind of idea potentially going to solve a problem for them. So that's kind of the activity that we want to kind of have a play and have a go with. It's a relatively straightforward activity. It might feel like it's kind of easy on the surface, but really when you kind of go into it, it's going to be a bit of an iterative process. So what we want you to do is have a first crack at coming up with your first kind of pass of this particular description, and then hopefully this kind of gives you a bit of a tool and a framework to kind of continue to iterate and develop over time. So the kind of key things I would like you to kind of have a go at, I guess, thinking through and jotting down, and Jonathan, I might kind of get your help just to kind of copy this into Zoom chat so that you've got it on hand. It's really a simple kind of framework where we're inviting you to think about, one, identifying, describing who is the customer, who might care about the problem that you're looking to solve. What is the jobs to be done for them? If they're going along in life, there's obviously lots of jobs that they're trying to get done. Some examples that kind of I shared just on the previous slide. For us in kind of Croxes, which is our business, for us, our customers are researchers, and so for us, we would potentially describe this our market as researchers. Are a group of people who are trying to use their understanding of how the world works to develop solutions and recommendations to positively impact the environment around them. So that would be how we would describe kind of our market or customer. What we're going to get you to do is have a go at developing your own version of that. So particularly this will be, I guess, really relevant for those of you who have got an idea and you're working on that idea. So yeah, invite you to have a go at writing these things down. So as enter your person, your customer, your market. I want to achieve a particular job, so I can. So the so I can is really important because it really is a way for you to try and get inside their heads. Why is this particular job to be done important for them? What is it that it's enabling? Is it enabling them to kind of fulfill a dream? Is it kind of sort of ensuring that they avoid a pain? So this is where you really get to have a go at trying to kind of understand, what is it that's motivating these particular people? And then if you get, you're already kind of there, you maybe have already got some ideas around your customer market, then we'd like you to kind of have a go at maybe brainstorming what are the current limitations and barriers that they experience right now in getting that job done. So what's getting in the way? Is there things that are, is the current solutions not really kind of satisfactory? Are there current kind of challenges that, they wish they could have this or that? Again, based on your current understanding. So that's kind of what we want you to have a go at writing down and having a bit of a dialogue with your friends that we're going to put you into breakout rooms with. All right, so that's the kind of job for the next 10 minutes or so. So if you have got something that you've written down, be ready to kind of jump into your breakout room and share that with your friends. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Anne-Marie. There you go. We've got one that's kind of already underway. So what we might do, just because we've kind of got a pretty good mix, so we'll just kind of randomly put you into breakout rooms. That way, at least you get to kind of meet some new people, have a bit of conversation. And so when you jump in, if you've got your customer problem statement ready to go, jump in, share that with your friends, and invite them for some suggestions and feedback. And we'll kind of go around the room and see how you go. All right, buckle in, enjoy. All right, welcome back. I hope that was a good conversation. I know my group kind of went on into different places, which is all fine, all part of the value of these particular sessions. We've got a couple more minutes left, so just want to kind of open up the floor to see if anybody had any kind of questions, reflections that they want to share in terms of really the topic of customer discovery, customer development that we're discussing, and then we'll kind of wrap up.
I think I might just start off there because something came up in our group is kind of viewing customer discovery as a process. I think is something that's really critical, and for scientists, seeing it as similar to what we do in the lab. It's experimenting. It's kind of going out, gathering data, analyzing that data, having your assumptions challenged, and making new kind of questions and hypotheses based on what you're hearing from people. And really what you're looking for is those kind of covariant responses from people. You go out and say, hypothetically for me, making a diagnostic, I have a technology that can make any diagnostic I want, and I can make it for anyone. It's about almost going out and talking to all those people and going through and finding those common through lines about what are all their similar problems, or do they have the same problems, or is what I'm proposing going to solve anything for them, and almost trying to use that to work back and find new customers and new markets. Because you may have wanted to make a device, but really, I think as Yadvir is still in the chat, we talked about you might actually be a person who's supplying reagents to someone who actually makes tests. Do you know what I mean? And it's about how you can almost through customer discovery understand what actually your product is, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think just connecting in and also understanding where you might fit in the value chain. I think Phil talked a little bit about that in terms of, each of the sectors or the areas that you're looking at will often be made up of different players, different organizations, providers. And so really doing that customer discovery early on enables you to kind of refine and continue to iterate, to really figure out where is the best place for you to play, especially if you are building, kind of early stage ventures that is kind of, biology powered. It's going to be pretty challenging to try and step into directly providing to the consumers and having that manufacturing kind of capability from day one. And so understanding and identifying, where is the best place to start. You might want to go there eventually, but that might not be the first place that you start. And these insights really you won't be able to gain that until you go out and have these conversations with different customers. Beautiful, which again is the wonderful little segue to say, and that is why you need to come and do our second workshop with Peter in a few weeks' time, where we will dive into, hearing Peter's experiences and stories about what is the value and how do you extract these insights from potential customers. And then we're going to do another activity similar to kind of the experience today, where we'll take you through a bit of a framework for you to sort of get started. Beautiful. All right. I think that's all for me tonight. Jason, anything else that you wanted to add in before we call it a night?
Yeah, I guess just one thing, kind of building on what you said, and it's, again, speaking to the technical people in the audience, it's when you do this, you understand your product fit, but you also understand what are you actually doing operationally as a company. When you actually define who your customer is, then you define your product. Then you actually define what it is you actually are doing in the lab, because you might be a strain, you might say, oh, we engineer yeast. But if you're engineering that yeast to make a product, like an actual chemical, what happens to that chemical? Is it leaving you in the yeast? Are you selling the yeast? And then you understand, do you need to be thinking about bioprocess? Do you need to be thinking about, I'm sure Peter's probably going to cover some things about this, but I feel like those are the kinds of things that why customer discovery is such a critical and early stage step, and what Phil was speaking to around it being a kind of a process that you're doing alongside your early stage experimental work. It shouldn't be experiments, then customer discovery. It should really be something you're thinking of alongside it, because it will guide what you actually do long term and even short term. But that's all from me, the official side.
Beautiful. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much. And I think, yeah, final plug in terms of the SynBio 10X program. If you are interested, or if you maybe we didn't quite have enough time to kind of answer any of your questions about, you know, what the application process is, why it might be valuable for you. Really do encourage you to hit up Jason if you do have any other questions. But we really, you know, thank you so much for engaging on a Thursday night, and we hope to see you in the next workshop, which is coming up in after Easter. So I believe it's the 26th of April. Beautiful. All right, good stuff. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Emily.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. I guess, yeah, if you're still hanging around now, I'm here for questions. Just a chin wag. Bye, Tom. See you tomorrow.